having your own currency is like having an insurance policy on your car. You're paying a cost for it, a premium. And you feel, my goodness, it's a waste of money until you have an accident. Same with your own currency. There is no doubt that your government has been for years now trying to keep a fixed exchange rate with the euro. So people out there can very easily be led to believe that, if we have a fixed exchange rate with the euro, we might as well have the euro, because now that we're not in the euro, we're paying a risk premium, a higher interest rate for borrowing. So why pay this? Well, it's your insurance policy. Imagine what will happen once you join the euro. Your interest rates will fall by a bit. There's going to be a lot more risk-taking, both by Bulgarians and non-Bulgarians. There's going to be, all other things being equal, there's going to be a flood of money into Bulgaria, because let's face it, if you're a Deutsche Bank, right, finance bank, you have excess liquidity, especially during quantitative easing, and you don't know what to do with this money. Because the Germans do not want to borrow this money. Corporations are in surplus. The federal government, structural surplus. Households, save. So there is a glut of money in the financial system in Frankfurt. Now, because of the small risk of a crisis in Bulgaria that would devalue your currency, right? They're not as keen to lend you because they have to take into consideration the devaluation risk, right? When they have the euro, when you have the euro, that goes away. So more money comes in. This is what happened in Greece in 2000. You're going to have bubbles. You're going to have a false sense of growth because of the bubbles. And then, if there is, knock on wood, a financial crisis, either in Bulgaria or outside, or in Wall Street, suddenly the easy money will flood out of the country and your bubbles will burst, and then you're going to be in serious trouble. Once you're in the euro, steadily there's going to be a flood of money from German banks and French banks to your banks. Your banks will lend people money. That will create asset price inflation. That will create bubbles. When those bubbles burst, you'll be in serious trouble. So effectively, you're going to be creating a problem for yourselves. And you are going to lose your capacity to, you will lose a major shock absorber, which you only need when there's a big pothole on the road. Now, the pothole will come, and the probability that it will come increases when you enter the euro. So it's a bit like, giving up your currency is a bit like removing the shock absorbers from your car and driving it into a pothole. It is not a very clever idea. Now, there's no doubt that there are very powerful interests in your country, like they were in my country, pushing for euro accession. Because they want their assets to be priced in euros, in dollars, in hard currency. They don't want your little Bulgarian currency. They would like the big assets to be priced permanently with the backing of the European Central Bank in euros. But the majority of Bulgarians are going to suffer for this. In any case, look, I'm not against a common currency. But we don't have a banking union. Okay? There is one only in name, but not in substance. There is no deposit insurance provided by the European Union, by the Eurozone. So your own banks will have to provide deposit insurance. Okay? If you enter, your government is going to be supporting the banks, which are going to be supporting the government, while at the same time the government supporting the deposits of the of savers. Effectively, we have no protection whatsoever. The possibility of devaluation, a one-off devaluation, which is always a great thing to have, not to use, to have. It's a bit like having an army. You don't want to go to war, but you have an army in case you go to war and in order to prevent a war. So this is the same thing with your capacity to devalue. If we had a proper banking union and a fiscal union, then I would be all for it. I want a common currency. I'm a federalist. I want a federal Europe. But we don't have one. To pretend that we have one because we have a monetary union is the greatest hubris against basic laws of economics. The Eurozone authorities, in particular the Eurogroup, which I happen to know reasonably well, better than I wanted to know it, they show a fantastic capacity to change everything to ensure that nothing changes. This is a great paradox. They will do anything and they will change anything so that nothing changes. So the first thing they did to keep everything the same is they violated the no bailout clause. They created a bailout machine, which then became the EFSF, which then became the ESM. Okay. But that is simply a machine for permanent, perpetual bankruptcy concealment, for hiding a bankruptcy, not for correcting it. So imagine if in the United States in 2008, right, the great state of Nevada did not have access to the FDIC and to the federal treasury and to food stamps and to unemployment benefit that is federal. It would be a complete disaster. It would be what happened to Greece, right? Now, how would the state of Nevada be helped if the United States had created a mini IMF, lending money to Nevada on conditions of strict austerity and giving it money on loan in order to bail out their own banks without the capacity to print money? It would be a catastrophe. This is exactly what's happening. So the ESM was an irrelevancy. They created it, but it is irrelevant. The last thing you want if you're bankrupt is more loans, right? Even if the interest rate is zero, it really doesn't help. You need haircuts, you need restructuring of the debt, or you need a proper Eurobond, which Europeanizes the debt. To cut a long story short, look at what happened during the pandemic. The pandemic hits, it's clear that the whole thing is going to blow up. I mean, we're going to have Greek national debt now is 215% of GDP. So it was 14 or 15 prime ministers and heads of state, Macron, the Greek prime minister, Sanchez in Spain, and so on. They asked for a Eurobond for essentially the additional debt due to COVID should be Europeanized, should not fall on the shoulders of Italy, of Greece, and so on. Merkel said 9. So she created the recovery fund, which is macroeconomically irrelevant, just like the ESM is irrelevant, because it does nothing for the Italian debt, for the Greek debt. This is why Lagarde now is in deep trouble, because she has a surge of inflation, right? But at the same time, she's the one that is rolling over the unsustainable debt of most Eurozone member states. And they have this recovery fund, which simply takes money from poor Germans and gives it to rich Greeks. Yes, it is true. At last, we had a Eurobond. Firstly, too little. Just ridiculously insignificant. And secondly, done in such a way as to ensure that the Dutch, the Austrians, and the Germans, I'm talking about the establishment now, not the people, right? Will say never again. So in my view, this is what I'm saying, this is a big question. And here we can disagree, but the big question is, are we moving slowly in the right direction or fast in the opposite direction? And I think, so you claim that we're moving in slow, kid steps in the right direction. I think we're going with great leaps in the wrong direction, because the idea of the Eurobond has been killed off forever now. Because they have practiced it in this particular way, it is really sordid. It's corrupt the way they're doing it. Think about it. It's 5% of GDP, of Eurozone GDP, to go directly into a green energy union, where Europe looks at Europe as a whole and says, okay, we're going to have an energy union, and we're going to invest in it centrally. What is Bulgaria doing good at producing in terms of renewables? What is Germany? Greece has a lot of sun. The countries closer to the Atlantic have a lot of wind, right? Let's create this and fund it directly, not give it to governments. I know what governments are like. I've been in one for a few months. I do not want European money to go into the Greek government. I would like, the European Union to actually conduct a federal program, if you want, for energy. By giving it to the Greek government, to the Spanish government, to the Italian government, the governments are going to give it to the oligarchs locally, to their mates. Already we're seeing it. It is sordid and it is very unseemly. The Dutch and the Germans who are transferring funds through this Eurobond to the south, look at that, and this, in my view, is the death knell of any proper fiscal union in the future. What would be the right way to do a Eurobond, in your opinion? I proposed that a long time ago, and then again at the beginning of the pandemic. Well, firstly, the bond should be issued by the European Central Bank, because it's the only serious institution we have. The European Commission is not a serious institution. Nobody takes it seriously. Okay, it's only if it has the backing of the European Central Bank. So once we have the European Central Bank, a lot of people in Brussels will be mad at what you say, but anyway. Tough. What can I do? They don't pay me sufficiently to lie, right? The ECB is the only institution that we have, financial institution, that is solid and dependable. So if I were a Chinese investor, a German investor, a Bulgarian investor, right? And there was a bond issued by the ECB, knowing that the ECB has printing presses, I would buy it immediately, right? And I would not have the member states backing it. Now, this bond that the Commission issued is backed by Greece, for goodness sake. What are we doing? Okay. So essentially, it's backed by Germany. So German conservatives or the liberals are livid about that. And they only accepted it because of the pandemic. But tomorrow, they're going to turn very nastily at the whole idea of a jointly and severally backed Eurobond. Whereas an ECB bond, and so my suggestion was a 30-year bond that would sell at negative interest rates immediately, right? And would fund what? It would fund this cushioning, so the new debt would not fall on the decrepit Italian state, Spanish state, Portuguese state, Greek state. Well, that's one. Secondly, the European Investment Bank, which already issues its own bonds, right? And they issue green bonds. They can issue whatever they want, right? Imagine if they were to fund the green energy union that we need. I insist on this because this is the one thing we can do well at the European Union level. The one thing we can only do at the European level, and the one thing that we really need to do. And you can see with the energy crisis that this is so. So the European Investment Bank could be given